Okay, it's going to be a minute here.
I wish I had this hair, though, I'll tell you. You know.
Okay, we're live on YouTube. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. We're going to wait a few minutes before we start our show today. And I'll give you a little bio on our guest and a little rundown of what's going on. Oh, we lost Charlie already.
No, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Okay. You must have turned off the video.
It went off for a second. Yeah. I'm okay though.
Okay, everybody. Well, thank you for joining us. If you're not catching the live, you can definitely catch it later on. It's going to be on YouTube right after we're done with the show today. And we'll upload it to Rumble as well, because we're going to be more active on Rumble. So our guest today is John Shaughnessy. Charlie and I actually met John at the Global Pyramid Conference a few years ago in Chicago. And John was one of the speakers there. I've been in contact with John on Facebook and following him for a while, and seeing his new updated material. He had some information that he wanted to get out that was pretty profound, and we figured it would be an awesome opportunity to have him on our show. So we're honored to have him here today. Thank you for joining us, John.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. But let me give you a little brief bio about John. So John is actually an engineer. He worked in the utility power industry, managing and operating hydroelectric power plants, fossil fuel power plants with steam, gas turbines, and aeroderivative jet engine driven generators. Known in the power industry for having a high, keen sense for troubleshooting and problem solving with outside the box approach thinking. John is actually the author of 3 books: Pyramid Gravity Force, There's Something About the Moon, and Pyramids and the Great Floods, which is what he's going to be talking about today. And I'd also like him to talk about how he can grow such awesome hair.
Yeah. It's just just eat good. Stay off of cheese and caffeine and all the sugars, and I think it's is it glyphosate?
Yeah,
glyphosate.
Hair, Get rid of the
Glyphosate.
Those
glyphosate.
3 things, and you're gonna get this hair done. I was bald before I got on that diet. Now I'm looking.
Yeah. I said, I wonder how many people are going to join just to see if that's your real hair or not. Yeah, John, give us a little rundown of what we're going to talk about today.
Well, we're gonna talk about these floods that we've had throughout history. They're recorded by the ancient text, and it's the Anunnaki, Gilgamesh, Atlanteans, Plato, the Abrahamic religions, the Hindu religions. The list goes on and on about these global floods. And what I'm looking at, it seems to be that it's not just one flood; it's multiple global floods that happen, and there's external forces that trigger these floods. And we do have a lot of information, with Genesis and a few other the ancient texts of how these floods are and where the water goes. Because we're talking about some significant water that covers the land in some of the stories, and so we'll be getting into that, and then I'm going to jump into the pyramids and the how they're used to control these hydrothermal geysers that get triggered by external forces or just the natural cycles on the planet that release this water. Now, recently, last decade or so, scientists have come to the conclusion with the ever-growing technological state that we have, that 2/3 of the ocean water is the water on the planet is actually trapped in a place called the transition zone, which is in between the upper and lower mantle. And I'm looking at this and I've been, digging into it for a couple of years now and thinking that, this is obviously the source of Noah's flood, the famous guy that we're all in the West, we're all brought up with Noah and his flood. And, Hollywood has multiple movies on this. I think the last one was done with Russell Crowe as Noah, and then plus then we've had some comedies on it and, a few other things. But anyways, long story short, what really brought it home, what really tied it in was the actual inner construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza, the actual inner chambers and the construction of it kind of all falls into place if you look at the fact that this is what these things are doing. They were trying to modify the release of these geysers to limit the collateral damage in the general vicinity of the pyramids. So
yeah, well, we know they're definitely not tombs for the pharaohs. That's the lie we've been told for a long time.
Right.
They weren't built by hundreds of thousands of slaves. There's actually way more information out there to prove otherwise, and we can't even mimic the way that they're built nowadays. And you had another book as well that talked about the effects on the earth as well, about the moon, right?
Yeah, the moon. And there is something about the moon. That was the second book I wrote. It's kind of right there. It's co-authored with Wendy Salter. And the first book I wrote was on pyramid gravity force and the effects that the pyramids have on magma currents. So there's always been an engineering geology type of effect from these massive pyramids that are around the globe. It's not just the one pyramid. Everybody goes to GP1 and forget about the rest of them. They all share a common thread and a purpose. And so when I get into this Giza control system, it'll be it's the same thing for all the other pyramids. Like in Belize, you got 10, 15 pyramids. Central America, you got there's a lot of big pyramids. China, talk about China's pyramids. There's freshwater oceans under both the Giza Plateau, the Sahara, and also in Shen, China. There's huge water oceans, freshwater oceans under there. So,
yeah. Well, the gig is up. We already have somebody that's on to you. They said, "Thank God, I thought it was Father Christmas." John has his costume on right now for the show, so he really doesn't look like that. But I thought it was cool that he sent me that picture, and it worked well with the cover of the book. So I'm not going
to be talking too long with this on. It's just...
I bet. You sound like you have a mask on a little bit.
Yeah, it's just doing a little synergy with Noah, tapping into Sudra and Noah and the Gilgamesh and all the other flood characters, the ancient floods, the global floods.
Yeah, that's awesome. I don't know what happened to Charlie. We lost Charlie again. My goodness, he's having a heck of a time over there with his internet apparently, and he was working from another location in his home, which had a better connection as well. So he'll be a little fired up when he gets back here, I'm sure.
Oh God, yeah, it's tough when you don't have good internet connection. It really is brutal. Yeah.
Somebody said, what about the cement theory building the pyramids? Yeah, that's an option too, You
got a French material scientist. I think his name was David Davidowitz. He's an engineer, a material engineer scientist, and he went over there and took samples from the outer casings and a bunch of other places around the Giza Plateau. And he's come back that these are geopalmers. They're not a natural stone that made up the casing and the grout that's in between the outer casings on the pyramids. And so there's actually evidence of that. And also if you look at, I think he also did it on some of the granite and the limestone. He's got 2 books out. If you're really interested in it, that science. I definitely suggest you get his work and drill down into what he's got. Now he's got spectral analysis and all the elements and everything else, and there's things that aren't even found in the element tables that are in the mix. So
Really?
yes, it's very high tech stuff because the people that built this thing built it to last. So
Yeah.
yeah. So
And
I believe in a lot of the pores. I believe in a lot of the pores in Saxe Huaman, Aliatambo, probably not pronouncing these things right, Tiwanaku and a few other places. I believe a lot of these large, megaliths were actually poured. And that's the only thing that really makes any sense at all. And I mean, limestone's, it's a sedimentary rock. So it could, if a technology could come along where you could, replicate that in a fast amount of time, just like a cement, and make these giant limestone 3-ton, 4-ton, 5-ton. Now I think some of the granite inside the GP1 is been traced back to the Aswan quarry, which I was in a couple of years ago. I was down there a couple of years ago. I was standing on the unfinished obelisk actually. So that seems to be a logical explanation that okay, the granite came from a quarry 500 miles south. That's right.
And there are mechanical cuts too that they claim they only had hands and chisels and stuff back then, but they're obviously mechanical cuts.
Yeah, they got to get some new material and drop the old hand tools.
Yeah,
it's just you just look foolish sticking to that, arguing that point because Christopher Dunn was down there. Read some of his books. Is obvious as the day is long as machine tool marks, giant saws with diameters of 24 feet. I mean, this is the curvature of these cuts. Huge blades. Diamond. There's diamond mines in obviously Africa, South Africa. There's diamond mines in southern India. So diamonds have been around for a while. The idea that there's no diamonds in Egypt is absurd. The other thing is, you could get the crushed up diamonds. They had the technology for bronze. You could, just pour you could, make a mold, all right, liquefy the bronze. And before you pour the bronze into the mold, you could sprinkle your diamond dust right at the edge of a blade that you're making, and then pour the bronze right into the mold. And you would have a knife with diamonds in it, or a blade with diamonds in it. So you could cut, go back and forth in an old saw if you wanted to do something like that. You could do the same thing with a tube, like a copper tube, if you made a copper tube. And then before you pour the copper or bronze tube, hollow tube, you put the diamond dust down in there, and then you pour the liquid bronze in there. And it's basically, bronze and diamond impregnated bronze, basically.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty simple technology if they want to keep it primitive, because we don't want to scare everybody that there might have been a technologically advanced society that was doing things, but you could conceivably do that kind of tool work even back then.
I think they are way more advanced than we are today in more ways than one. Now this world is just getting ridiculous day by day. So, but why don't we go into your PowerPoint, John? I know you have a lot to share with us. If you want to screen share that. And welcome back, Charlie.
Let me get my.
I'm now switching computers to see if that's the problem.
Well, you look good there. You're coming in bright and clear.
Well, I know. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Could be the computer. Yeah, it just can't deal with the RAM.
Well, it's a brand new computer, so I think it may have something to do with not the age of the computer.
I'm gonna get my stunt double to come in and do the
Yeah.
PowerPoint. So, all right.
Yeah. Yeah. One of our comments, Charlie,
There
when
he
you were,
is.
there's John.
He's the guy that does the motorcycle jumps in the show, you know.
Yeah. When you were gone, Charlie, one of the people watching said, "Thank God, I thought it was Father Christmas."
Father time here. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, here goes a PowerPoint, and it should be shouldn't take too long. We'll just buzz right through it. I'll give you the old proverbial, one picture's worth 1,000 words. So okay, great. We're up on the screen, so it doesn't sound like I look like I'm just talking to myself for half an hour.
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah, the last one I did was I was just on my own, just rambling away. I was like slouching in the chair, it's like I was falling asleep. Like the host had to wake me up a few times, I was like,
What?
All right, so God's source of water for Noah's flood. It's from the transition zone, the firmament. The volume of water in that location covered the entire planet with water. Anyway, so moving right along, we'll get into this. We're going to just touch on Genesis, and we'll be touching on Genesis and a few other parts of the Bible there. But it's like a lot of the Bible is actually history, so you tease out the technology and try to put the puzzles together with this particular book. But anyways, long story short, it's God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. Now this will come in full circle in a few other slides later than now. The firmament, and it was so, and God called the firmament heaven. And the other side is more or less the same. So it's just on the sixth day in Genesis, when God created Adam and Eve, he also split the firmament. The waters started to recede. So there was something when he divided the firmament. It's like the water started to recede. So he opened up something. I mean, we're using God because we don't understand the technology, So I mean, that's just how things are written down from the ancients. So anything that's super high tech is going to put it on God. But then we come in 4,000, 5,000 years later trying to actually figure the mechanics out. So in essence, the water drained from the surface of the earth and went into this place called the transition zone. And we'll get into that in another slide, next slide. But so more or less, you get a little bit of the description of what happened, the month and day, and the timeline. So I learned early on, like, you don't tie your theories into timelines and dates and a lot of the math that you get, because it all contradicts each other, So I just take the actual text and and try to leave it with that. So anyways, on the fountains of the great deep broke apart, and the windows of heaven were opened. It began to rain. So right off the bat, he's talking about the water coming up from the ground. Okay, that's the whole thread in this whole presentation. My book is this water comes up from the ground, and it causes the clouds, the rain. So there's superheated water under extreme pressures that blast into the sky and create clouds, and it just condenses just like any other vapor that gets up into the atmosphere. Eventually turns to rain and comes back down. So anyways, the rain fell for 40 days, covered the earth, the highest place at the time of over 20 feet, 15 cubits. So Mount Ararat, I don't think you're talking about the Himalayas, the mountains that are 36,000 feet, or 5 miles in the sky. But I think these mountains in this local area are 3,000 to 5,000, maybe higher. feet. So we're talking about a significant amount of water. If you look at that, you look at this stuff. So, I mean, you got to take a lot of it with a grain of salt. Not that it couldn't happen, because there is that much water stored in this transition zone. The water rose to the highest level, covering the whole Earth, sometimes between the 40th and 150th day. 150 days was the 17th day of the 7th month. The ark rested on the mountains of Arafat. On the 150th day, the springs of the great deep were shut off. So these geysers were shut off on the 150th day. And the rain from above ceased, and the waters began to continually recede. And then the mountains became visible, and so on and so forth. So,
John, if I can stop you for a second, because I missed some of this.
Yeah.
So you're saying that this isn't rain coming from above. This is geysers from this pool of water underneath the Earth that were spouting up from underneath.
Right. You're talking about geysers.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Exactly. So this water shoots up into the atmosphere, and because it's hot, it's going to go up. It's got high pressure. Then it's going to condense, turn to rain, and come down in the form of rain and hail. There's another part of the Bible that talks about hail coming down in the magnitude of 150-pound blocks of ice. So it's pretty pretty terrifying stuff. A lot of energy here.
Okay.
So basically, just to in a nutshell, the pyramids are built over these geysers. We'll get into it, but and they stop this thing from getting into the atmosphere to begin with. So we're trying to manage this water cycle the best we can. This technology that's on the Earth was built to manage this type of event. So, all right, now we're going to get into a little bit of graphics here to show this transition zone. And according to the Genesis created narrative, God created the firmament to separate the waters above the Earth from the waters below. The Earth, the world, is anglicized from the Latin firmament, which appears in the Vulgate, a late 4th century Latin translation of the Bible. So, I mean, if you look at the ocean, how thick the ocean is in this graph, it's about as thick as your fingernail, right? And then you get down to the transition zone where this water it's a water-bearing layer. It's not just water. It's almost like a sandstone or a very porous material that's in there that makes up this, but the water's trapped in it. So there's big pockets of huge oceans of water, but then there's material in there also that make up this transition zone. But then you have the upper mantle above it, and then you have the lower mantle below it. So this water could cover, the highest mountain, which, Mount Everest in the Himalayas, which is 36,000 feet high. So that's how much water is in here. Now, my theory is that an external force comes along, plus this is a huge cycle. So just say the flood happened, go to the Jewish year. Their year is like around, I think it's like 5873 or something like that, or 5783, somewhere there. Just say 5800 years, and that's the day the flood started to subside, and the water drained off of the Earth. So that's, if you look at that as year one, well, so for the most part, we're 5800 years from when all that water was on top of the Earth, and now 58 years later. 5,800 years later, today, there's a cycle. There's a cycle where the water drains from the ocean floor back down to this transition zone where the subduction zones are. So you have the ocean plates that push up against the continents, and they flow down underneath the continent. Well, there's a flow of water, ocean water, that goes down also. And it makes it down through the upper mantle into this transition zone. So it's more like a stratification type of system that takes the water, it's like, you go to an oil refinery and they heat up the crude oil. They got number 6 oil on the bottom, number 4 oil. Then you get number 2 oil on the top one. You get kerosene. Above that, you get gasoline. It's the same type of stratification. So we're dealing with high temperatures, high pressures. So there's a stratification technology going on under the Earth's crust. It kind of gives you a little bit more of a visual of this water, the ocean, because and there's papers published. A lot of scientists, geoengineers, geologists, geophysicists, theoretical geophysicists say, with all the ice melt and glacier melt, the ocean water should be 3 to 4 feet higher than it is today, right? So
Okay.
So basically, where the girth is getting bigger, but what it's doing is creating more pressure on the floor of the ocean. So this water that shouldn't be, the bottom line is the floor of the ocean is not covered with the blue vinyl pool liner. It leaks. So it's just pressure. The ocean gets bigger, and it only gets so higher than it overcomes, the pressure that's on the floor of the ocean, and it goes down into these transition zones.
And that's where we have all these rivers, the water's disappearing in them right now.
Right.
Exactly. And
So
there's no drought in those areas, so where's the water going?
So it's like a big cycle from the beginning of the flood to where we're at now. So you get this huge, when you get the flood, it fills up all the aquifers, groundwater oceans, underground oceans. It fills up everything. But over a long period of time, because it's not getting replenished like a big flood, it's just getting replenished from rain, right? And a lot of that rain doesn't make its way to these underground aquifers that are huge. They're miles long all over the continent. So, but anyways, you can see pockets of water by itself, and there's waterlite and ringwoodite material that they've found in diamond mines. Now, diamonds are made in this location, blue diamonds themselves. So like just say De Beers diamond mine in South Africa, there's actually a tube that actually went all the way down to this transition zone. So so this is the material that they found where the diamonds were in it, and so it's just kind of like off the topic, but it just gives you a little bit more idea that early Earth had vents that came up. They're called cooling vents, and a lot of them supply the world's gems today. There's one particular place that was found maybe 1990 or 1980. It's an ancient cooling vent. It's a source of many gems, and it's up above the Arctic Circle in the North Pole, and it's being mined as we speak today. But it's these tubes came up from this transition zone. They call them cooling vents. Pyramid of the Sun has one right underneath it. Like if there's a tunnel that goes into the the grade, the ground level of that pyramid, and in the middle of it there is an ancient vent, thermal vent.
This is in Bosnia.
So that's the
This
smoking
is the pyramid in Bosnia, John.
Yep. The pyramid in Bosnia, I think, is also built on a large geyser also, absolutely. Yeah. And there's actually water under the pyramid of the Sun in Bosnia and the other pyramids too.
Yeah,
but it's not,
healing
groundwater. There's groundwater, but it's not the explosive geyser water that gets triggered through different events. So we have, there's a picture of the blue diamonds. I guess these are pretty prevalent in that zone, in the transition zone. I guess they're pretty expensive. And this is like a location of the diamond production around the world that shows where these massive, tubes that come up from the or mine tubes, whatever you want to call them, vent tubes that come up from that transition zone, Australia.
Well, that's interesting to see such a big one over Russia,
Yeah.
and Russia building the Russian geometry pyramids, hundreds of them for the past 20 or 30 years all over Russia.
Right.
That makes sense. Maybe the pyramids are kind of like the Ark, you know, that was
Yeah.
built to save humanity from the floods.
Yeah, absolutely. I got touch it. I'll touch it on that one too. That's in my book. You know, it's
Yeah.
that's also touched on. There's a play on words in a third century Greek Bible. The word pyramid is used instead of ark. So
Really?
yeah, so I touch on that where
Hmm.
you know the Hollywood or whatever the Bible talks about a boat with two on two you know, two species and all this other stuff, but there's also the potential that the ziggurats that they made over the Tower of Babel or whatever, maybe you know, God wanted them to build Noah have him build a ziggurat over a hydrothermal vent to stop that part of the world from being inundated from this huge vent. There's a well from hell in Yemen that's like 100 feet in diameter and 300 feet deep that you know has all the signatures of water erosion, you know, coming from the deep. These things are all like the ziggurat, or what do you call it, the ziggurat or the Richter, not the ziggurat, the what's it called, the Richter or the Eye of the Sahara. The Rickard hole, it's like 40 miles in diameter. That could also have been like a hydro vent, an area of the world where, you know, it just lets go and blows up, something happens. And ironically, the pyramids and that the Rickard structure, they call it. So, you know, wait for my brain to catch up with my mouth. Anyways, anyway, so I mean, these two things are at each end of this freshwater ocean that goes right across the Sahara, right? That's way down deep, you know. So there's some other mechanics going on here, and that's we'll get into it.
Yeah, and then in South Africa, they have a lot of the stone circles that Michael Tellinger talks about.
Yeah. Those made from those stones that have some kind of acoustic properties to it.
Yeah, they're like ring. They ring. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's tens of millions of these things. I think they're in the millions. I think it's like these circles.
Yeah, and you can see how frequency affects water. Yeah. You know, maybe that had a function with the floods as well.
Yeah, they was still working with something, trying to calm something down, or you know, filter something, or you know, smooth something out to stop whatever it is, you know, energies that are controlling some energies, or maybe using collectively using them all for a energy potential. So yeah, I mean, he's done some great work. Michael Tellinger has really done some amazing work over the years.
Yeah.
The Ubuntu,
I agree.
The Ubuntu.
Yeah, the Ubuntu movement. I would love to start my own community here.
Yeah. So this is like just an artist rendition of a possible fracture of the upper and lower mantle, right, where the water just breaks out of the transition zone. It just goes right up to the crust of the earth, and it's going to come out of all the orifices all over the globe, right? That, you know, places that, you know, these ancient orifices or vent tubes are, and this is where the water potentially, you know, the source of water comes from that creates these global floods, these massive floods that just don't, you know, they're hard to comprehend, really. An amazing amount of water. So, I mean, it's kind of frightening, but at the same time, I think ancient societies were on board and trying to curtail it and control it and limit it. And more or less, if you can stuff a lot of the major holes around the planet with these big giant pyramids and buy enough time, you won't get the big flood, the five miles over your head. It might be 140 feet or above sea level. It'd be, you know, a lot more of a minimal global flood. It's still going to be a global flood, but it won't be you know, catastrophic as you know, the biblical events. So here we are on the moon Europa. It's a moon that orbits Jupiter. It has a hot mantle, and it has water plumes that reach 120 miles into the sky. It's about, you know, it's about a quarter of the size of the Earth. So it's actually a pretty significant. It's about maybe the size of our moon, somewhere in there, I think, if memory serves me correctly. But So this is a natural phenomena that happens year round on this thing. So it's just to give you an idea that, you know, the water boils up, builds pressure, and shoots out of the icebergs on that planet. Well, it's like it's a moon because it's on Jupiter, but if it was in its own rotation around the sun, it'd be a planet. So it's a water planet. Is theorized as probably some kind of form of life, you know.
Yeah.
Wherever water is, it seems to be, you know, that forms complex life forms, cellular stuff, and things of that nature. So, anyways, just to give you an idea of what we're talking about here. Looks like our pictures are over my writing, but anyways, I'm just gonna dive, just kind of like just sideways in before we get to the pyramid. I'm just gonna sideways into, you know, that thing that was discovered in I think in the 90s. But Viking 1 and 2 were sent into space. They get to the outer limits of the solar system recently, I think, but relatively speaking. But this was 1976 when they launched these things. I was actually working in the planetarium in the Boston Museum. So I was talking earlier, like you see these things come full circle around. So I was, you know, collecting tickets and, you know, working with the planetarium with the Ziese, almost Charlie's last name. I was wondering if he was related to the
Wish
Ziese,
I were.
Ziese family, optic family. great cameras, right? So
Yeah.
anyway, so you know, I would be part of the show. I'd be running around the outside of the dome, changing these Bell and Howell slides, and these old slides, you know, during the show, you know, and you know, getting the show going. We do supernova and asteroids and comets and all sorts of things. We had one of the best sound systems in the world. It was I used to go in there on Sunday morning. I had the whole place to myself for a couple hours, and I flick on all the cameras and put the music on and rock out to, you know,
Nice.
Steve Miller Band and Pink Floyd and a few other things. Anyway, so yeah, getting back to this, why I have this up here. This Matt LaCroix brought this up on a recent YouTube video with Paul Wallace, and he did Mac. It's my first time listening to Matt Croy, but LaCroix rather, is just astounded by his knowledge. And he's young. I think he's in his 30s, so he's really hitting this hard. He's got 3 books out. But anyways, he talks about that. Can't read this particular article, but the Viking 1 and 2. I think it was Viking 2 maybe found it, but the Viking 2 found what they surmised the 10th planet, Nibiru. You know,
Oh yeah,
50 million miles out, and it was a big, you know, the news went out. Oh, we found the planet. It explains all the permutation, you know, the deflections of the that can't be explained of our solar system, planets and orbits all being manipulated with tips sideways, this, that, and the other thing. And then soon after that, they discovered there was a dead star. So just a star that you know, exploded, and the mass that's left is just dead. There's no energy to it. It's just gravity. It's just a dead star. And that this particular article, they theorized that Nibiru, if that's the planet, is actually trapped in orbit around this thing, and it does a 26,000 mile orbit. Now I'm just paraphrasing what Matt LaCroix was talking about on Paul Wallace's show, and he said that the astronomers that discovered this were you know, they both died within a week of each other of throat cancer. So you know, it's like, you know, it's a message, you know, shut up.
Mm-hmm.
So and then all of a sudden everything's erased. Like you can go on the internet right now and try to find dead star. It's a binary orbit with our sun. It has a 26,000 year orbit, just like our precession. So this thing comes into the solar system, and it might be this thing that actually ruptures that transition zone and allows this water to release and give us that a flood every 13,000 years or 26,000 years. Who knows what the time frames are, but so there is something big on the outer that's on the outer solar system, and everything's been erased. So these guys found some information. You can see some kind of like orbit with our solar system that this thing comes in, it gets the perigee, then the apogee, then comes back out again. So it might be, you might be getting damage coming in and damage going out, or just damage coming in and nothing coming out. So interesting stuff. When you get a chance, I'll send you a link to that.
Yeah.
That if you look up those two guys, I mean, that video, I think it's got like 700,000 views. I mean, it's on YouTube.
Well, that's the only way for us to really gather true information. It's true when people are getting knocked off for speaking about it, and that's pretty much the only way we can determine if something's true anymore.
Yeah.
So they find the giant skeletons, the Smithsonian swoops in and takes them out in the ocean and dumps them and says, oh, there's no giant skeletons.
We don't believe in giants. Yeah.
I mean, that's what they've been doing to us for a long time. So
and anybody that's in this department or in the inside the mainstream, they deny the giants also. They just don't talk about it, never see it, don't want to know about it. We've had giants. The 2 towns over in Cummington, Mass, and Goshen also, there was 12, 14-foot giant skeletal remains that were discovered, and they were in the town hall basement in the 1800s, and the Smithsonian, or the 1900s, I forget when, but they came in and took them. The Smithsonian from Washington D.C. took the giants, but there's still an article and pictures
in the newspaper
in the ancient archives of the town that proves that these things once existed.
Yeah. There was a mass grave of giants in Sayre, Pennsylvania, right on the border of Pennsylvania and New York.
Really?
I can't remember how many, but they were, I think, 8 or 9 feet tall, and they all had horns as well.
Oh, really?
Horns and 2 rows of teeth. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of things that have been hidden from us. Can you imagine where we would be if we actually knew all the truth and had that to work with in the first place? Like, we have to, people badmouth people like us who are actually seeking things where, we're not saying that this is truly true, but this could be a possibility from the information that we've discovered. What have you done by sitting there doing nothing? That's what most people do that are judging us for doing our work.
Yeah, exactly. We're on these timelines. There's no, it's intellectually stimulating, and we, converse with a small group of people. Really, it's very small. If you look at the, the population, there's not even 1% of the people that are even interested in this stuff. But there's something that drives us. There's some kind of biological memory, past life stuff that drives you back into this over and over again, because that's where your roots are. That's where you sprung from this type of environment or technology or what have you. Yeah. It's they always give us the same answer over and over again when they get cornered. Well, we don't want to start a panic. We don't want everybody wigging out. And then in essence, they want you just drowned or leave.
And if they truly
and only
cared
the
about
chosen
us,
people make it. I don't know.
But if they truly cared about us, we would all have health care. We would all be rich. We would all have education. They don't care about us.
So
we need to figure this out, and talking to each other about these things and doing presentations like this and sharing it with the world. That's what happens. But we're also, people like you, people like Charlie, who are coming out with these ideas. You're risking your lives by putting this information out there. That's literally what's happening. And people need to respect that, because,
I've had my papers seized over in Germany, over in Berlin, by U.S. and German customs. Like, I was just chatting with nuclear physicist over there, not nuclear physicist, but physicist over there about, I had a couple of ideas on a gravity experiment, how to lower the gravitational field locally. And I was sending in papers and documents, and then the last batch that had the crux of the biscuit, if you will, crux of the biscuit, crooks too, but I got seized, and I text the guy, I said, hey, get my last light? No, he says, that's all. It's like, 30 days later, I looked up and then it said on my tracking that it was seized by German customs. Excuse me. And then the German, I said, hey, why don't you call and see if you can't get that last letter released? And they called, and German's customs said the U.S. customs seized it, So I'm like, of course, I go to the post office general, my post office guy in town. I go, hey, I paid $26 to send this letter. It hasn't got there yet. What's going on, And he goes, well, I've never seen anybody's mail seized out of the stream of mail. Like that's the first time for me. I've never even heard of this, And anyways, back and forth, I think day 45 or something like that, they released it and gave it to the physicist. But, obviously I was raising some eyebrows, and they sent my stuff to somebody else saying, is it okay to release this, But they never call you. They say, hey, John, yeah, we don't like what you're doing, or they just come in and take your crap. They don't even let you know what they don't even tell you anything, and
they come there, they send the men in black to your house and flash you with a little thing to make you forget for a while.
Well, I'll tell you, every time I toy around with gravity, I mean, one time I was doing an interview like this, there was actually a helicopter. It was like 8 o'clock at night. There's a helicopter just like literally hovering over my house. Whoa, 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 whoa. It's like I couldn't see what it was over there. You could hear it on the microphone, you could hear it. And we're just laughing. It's like, they don't like what I'm talking about. It's like just a thing. But anyways, I guess they don't. It's just weird. It's just bizarre. But yeah. So it'd be nice if we lived in a world where everything was open.
Well,
we knew our past. We know where we're going. We know the dangers. What's the big deal? It's just it's always just covet the secrets. Don't tell anybody. And
what I have to step in and digress on this, because it happened to me too when I was writing my book, John. That there's an article from a Russian torsion physicist named Anatoly Akimov, and it essentially, David Wilcock had described the article as indicating that any pyramid or cone that has the golden ratio kind of cooked into its geometry will create free energy. So I went to my local library, and they did an interlibrary search for it, and they found it at the Library of Congress. And Library of Congress came back and said, oh yeah, we'll ship it off in a few days. Well, that became a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks. And finally they said, we had it, and this other institution, which was never named, had it as well, but now we can't find it. So I had to go to London to get it, and it's in the book.
Wow.
But I've been able to corroborate that with my own kind of harmonics or wave mechanics research. But they kept it from me as well. So
wow, so you're touching on things they don't want you to,
That's right.
Any approach to the oil economy. Playing with fire. You got any kind of, we got Stanley Myers, guy was running around on the water car, in Oklahoma or wherever he was, and
sure,
it's always the car accident,
car
accident. They have their ways of doing things to get the message to everybody else,
Yeah.
So they're serious about maintaining their control over the over this industry. But it seems like there's some. Seems to be lightening up a little bit, with electric cars and things of that nature, but it's still very oil intensive.
Or that just takes more oil than ever.
Yeah, when you look at those machines, you look at the machines that are mining this lithium. I mean, they're using 100 gallons an hour of diesel fuel or a minute. I don't know. They're just monster machines that are digging and driving and all the processes and everything. So they've proven that 100 times over that it's not the carbon footprint on electric cars is 10 times worse than
That's right, exactly.
Oh, we already know they're liars. They lie about everything. So good Lord.
It's just all control. That they've got a textbook, and they pull the book out, and they execute it, one page at a time. we've seen it, the pandemic,
Yeah.
the stuff in Ukraine, all this, it's just a constant, change of what's going on and where they want us to be,
Yeah.
But anyways,
Okay, let's get back to the
back
flood
on
here.
track. Here's the ark.
Sorry,
Here's the
guys,
ark.
we got
So,
a little off
40
track
years.
there, but
Yeah. Anyways, it's more or less just just a photo. So this guy, got challenged to make the ark. Like I said earlier, it could have been the ziggurat, because if you look at the language, they were using pyramid, not ark. In this 3rd century. I think it was AD, yeah, Greek rendition of the Bible. So anyway, every one of these Egyptian pyramids have a subterranean well shaft. So so this is, if you go into any of these pyramids, they all have this dank, dingy part of the pyramid that nobody ever cleans out, goes down into, except like obviously GP1, it's pretty well excavated, but Khufu's pyramid, Cheops. But I'm surmising that this location, where these pyramids from Saqqara, Abusir, right up to Giza, it's almost a straight line right up to what's his Pyramid of the Sun in Bosnia. I mean, there seems to be like this line that comes out of actually comes out of what do you call Lake Victoria, right out of that's the source of the Nile. Really, it's kind of just this line that goes right through Africa, north south. But anyways, so these pyramids all have these subterranean chambers, but there's never been any real cleaning and excavating other than GP1. They went down 37 feet in the subterranean chamber. There's a shaft that goes down. And they dug down 37 feet. I think it was 1920s. They were looking for another, chamber, burial chamber, this, that, the other thing. But there was no end in sight, right? It was just debris and gravel and material like that. So just keep that in mind. And that's that. And then this is a stone check valve that's basically on all the pyramids in Egypt that come out of these ascending passageways. Actually, this is the descending passageway, but now this is in the order of like 5-ton, 10-ton stone that's actually hinged. There's actually stone hinge marks where these things were or are still, and the stone hinges that are that are cut into the stone, and then the walls come up, the 2 jambs come up to hold it in place. Now, if you can look at this, you see where you just vision where it falls back down on its own weight. It needs pressure from the inside to open. This is a water check valve. This is a massive water check valve that's in these passageways that are somewhere in the neighborhood of like 4 feet by 4 feet, less than that. I think I forget the exact dimensions of the ascending descending passageways, but anyways, so that's just more evidence that this is set up to open up under pressure. You're going to open this up under pressure, and it's water that it discharges. The whole pyramid, GP1 pyramid, is built to withstand extreme internal pressures, right? Water pressures, hydraulic pressure. These isolated girdle stones, or there's like a lot of them going towards that check valve that I showed you on the Great Pyramid. And then they're inside the ascending passageway leading up to the Grand Gallery. Now, these things are like, 10 feet or 15 feet by 15 feet with these holes, square holes cut in. So the giant, 8-10-ton stones that have cut square holes in them, and then what they do is they build they assemble the actual passageway through them. Okay, so if you look at like your radiator clamp on your hose on your car, this is what they're doing. They're preventing the bulging of these passageways when the pressure increases in them. It stops these things from blowing out. So these things wrap the ascending passageway, And like I said, the closer you get to the outside of the pyramid, the more these girdle stones are. They're all the way. Actually, we get right to the very end. There's like 15 or 16 of them just stacked one after another to deal with that extreme pressure right before the check valve opens up. You don't need them on the inside of the pyramid because you have the mass of the pyramid built up against it, against the passageway. But when you get to the outside of the pyramid, you don't have that mass. Go ahead.
I'm a little confused. The check valve, is that going to prevent water from going out of the pyramid or coming into the pyramid?
That prevents that allows the water to leave the pyramid.
To leave the pyramid.
Yeah, so if you look at the geyser, just say the pyramid's built on a geyser, right? Which
okay.
When you get this, explosion from or a catastrophic event in the transition zone, the water comes up from the deep, like the Bible says. It's going to hit the what do you call it, subterranean chamber.
Okay.
It's going to take a somewhat of a hard right, and it's going to go straight up the descending passageway to that check valve and blow out. It's just it's like a relief valve on your boiler. It's just going
all right, or on a pressure cooker or something. Yeah.
A relief valve on your radiator on your car. You get too high in pressure, it's going to lift.
Okay.
So, and then I'll get to the next slide. I'll drive it home a little bit with the next video. You're right. You're all right. So you're right on time. You're asking the questions right before we get to the next thing.
Sorry.
Anyway, this no, it's good. Jump right in. Because people listening, they want to, they got the same questions, I'm sure. But so this is more like the blue and white arrows show you the water flow, and the check valve is right where the pictures are on the screen. But anyways, it just, the water just comes up from the deep, goes straight out through the check valve. Now the well shaft, there's another well shaft that goes up to the grand gallery descending passageway. That takes a lot of the air and water and steam and everything up, that actually floods out the grand gallery, the Queen's chamber, and the King's chamber. Now, the way the water flows in this is, so you have this enormous pressure. Now, just say that check valve won't open until it hits 2,000 to 3,000 psi.
Okay.
Right? It's not going to move. It's going to bleed out some water. There's these things ain't watertight, but they're somewhat, they're not going to dump a lot of material out until you hit a certain pressure. Mm-hmm. So what happens is you have the steam and water going up to the grand gallery, through the portcullis chamber, into the King's chamber, and through the ceiling and the ceiling of the relieving chambers. This pressure bleeds off. Now, a lot of the excavation in the Great Pyramid, they've drilled core holes and they found quartz sand. There's quartz sand down by the Queen's chamber on the side of the that particular the Queen's niche, which was an old grand gallery. It's got the same structure as the old grand gallery, and this is a second rebuild, so that they just shut that down, removed it. Maybe they used the stone somewhere else. But anyway, long story short, kind of going off topic. But so you got this quartz sand. Now, what's the significance of quartz sand is it doesn't compact like sand on a beach. It can take the water. Like if water goes into it, it's not going to compact. It allows the water to bleed through, but actually it also gives some kind of structural integrity to where it's packed into also. So you'll have water bleeding through the stones into these sand chambers, and the water actually bleeds out of the pyramid in different places that we haven't actually found yet. So that's another smoking gun, that why in God's earth would you use quartz sand? But that's one of the things that it doesn't mold up, it doesn't pack down, it stays loose and granular. So it allows water to flow through it. And it's also up above in the, I believe up in the King's chamber also, but there's like if you look at the relieving chambers, that's also like a place where the pressure, air pressure, gas pressure, water pressure will bleed out eventually and leave the pyramid through these, big giant sand chambers that just bleeds out over time. So so what you're looking at the king's chambers, queen chambers is like an air chamber on a plumbing system. It's an air conditioning chamber. You have, like, I don't know if the wash machines, a lot of times they'll put like little copper tubes. So, because the wash machine has electric solenoid valves that slam shut and open. So to stop the water hammering, they'll put these little, copper tubes there. And they're filled with air, they're expansion chambers, and they'll take the shock of the initial, water hammering. So in essence, these chambers, Grand Gallery, the King's Chamber, Queen's Chamber, are there to absorb this enormous shock that comes into the structure, right? So the whole thing is trying to control a geyser that might be in the order of 100,000 psi or 50,000 psi of pressure. Not always, but there might be the initial surge could be enormous. That's why you need these pyramids that are 6 million tons to sit down on top of these things and try to control the discharge. And so that's why you'll have these other chambers are all in part, absorbing, controlling, and trying to, minimize the damage from the surrounding community. Instead of like, if you just had a geyser just blowing up straight up out of the Giza plateau, which was the original design before they put these pyramids down, it would go up, 50 miles in the sky, come raining down all over the place with hail, water, you name it, and all sorts of horror. So this is, a technology that limits this when these water events happen, these flood events happen. So in essence, it's just a plumbing. It's a simplified plumbing apparatus.
Yeah.
It lowers the shock on the whole pyramid and allows this thing to flow out the side. Now, to prevent overpressurization, if the door didn't open or what have you, they have the vents, right? I mean, you have the shafts, whatever you want to call them, the king queen shafts. They both have two shafts going out. One's going north, one's going south. And the block that these shafts are tied into in the king and queen's chamber are recessed. And they cut right into the back of these 3-foot thick blocks. And that's where the shafts actually go in from the back that tie it to the shafts that lead out to the outside of the pyramid. Anyways, there was so they left 5 inches. So this technology is used today in the engineering business, power plant business, plumbing business, what have you. And they're called blowout diaphragms, right? They put blowout diaphragms on closed vessels like steam vessels, air conditioning, compressors, and a bunch of other different vacuum chambers, things of that nature. But all it is just a piece of material that is set to blow out at a certain pressure. So this 5 inches of granite was set up to blow out if the king's chamber or the queen's chamber got overpressurized. So it would blow out and release the pressure out the vents to the outside of the pyramid, right? So, so I can read this. It says the shaft block cutaway. Oh, I just explained it anyway. So it's basically a foolproof relief valve. So if it really goes high, these things will blow out and allow the pressure to release. And it kind of makes sense. Now, I'm still working on mathematically trying to figure out what the maximum allowable, not the maximum. Yeah, I can find out what the maximum allowable working pressure is of the king's chamber or the queen's chamber once I figure out what the destructive limit is of a piece of granite. Like how much pressure can you put up on a piece of granite before it blows up?
Right.
Now, and I'm theorizing that they probably had like cuts down around it might have even gone to 1 or 2 inches. You know what I mean? So it would just blow out like a plug.
Yeah.
That's also possible too. We don't have these pieces; they're gone sands of time, but
Sure.
they're more or less a very efficient, foolproof, last forever type of relief valve.
Interesting.
All right, and this is kind of going into the King's Chamber here. We got all this tunneling going on. You can see to the left, you'll see like these white tunnels that come up before the grand at the end of the Grand Gallery and before the what do you call it, the portus colors rather, that goes up. And then they did a lot of tunneling all the way up, and they named the chambers the Davison Chamber. Davison was the first one. Then you had Wellington, Nelson, Lady Arbuthnot. I'm pronouncing that right. Arbuthnot, and Campbell Chamber. So everybody's got their name up there. Again, this is not good, because when these guys just come back and all this stuff's open, it's going to destroy the pyramid. It's not going to be able to withstand the pressures that it was originally designed for, and you're gonna have these massive blowout. So I just figured I'd put that up there. That there is a need to put these things back to their original state. I'm gonna fly over to Egypt and talk to the president tomorrow.
You were just over there.
I know, right? Okay, so going full circle, why are these pyramids sometimes set up in the Orion configuration, the dog leg? Well, all the check valves, all the blowout valves, all head north, right? So these things are set up where they'll lift at different pressures. So they're all set. These pyramids are all built on a geyser cavern, if you will, right? There's a huge cavern. They've found, these things from, ground penetrating radar. They think there's caves under there beyond the, the tunnels and the causeways and all that stuff. But even lower, they've discovered there's some kind of a cavern, a connecting cavern or something. And that's where the main tube comes up from the deep. But so if you're looking at it, you'd see Menkaure, Menker or Menkaure, whatever how would pronounce it. I think it's 2 pronunciations. That would lift first. So that would just say that would lift at 10,000 psi, and then the GP2 Caffrey would lift at 15,000 psi, and then GP1 Cheops would lift at 20,000 psi. So it's just like a set of relief valves, water relief valves that would dump. Now all these there's ancient causeways, north-south causeways, again ground penetrating radar. Now you see the white lines coming out of the north side of the pyramids.
Yeah.
The water goes right by the pyramids. Menkaure doesn't hit GP2, GP2 doesn't hit GP1. And the Nile River actually takes a hard right past, a hard left rather, going west. When you go up past the Giza plateau, can't see the picture here, but it goes left and it goes all the way across the 3 pyramids and then goes right and goes north again. In some kind of a west northerly direction, and then it goes out to the Mediterranean Sea. There's also newly discovered tunnels that we were talking about earlier that actually might have been used to bring this water directly to the Mediterranean. So the whole gist behind this technology is to stop this stuff from going airborne. When these big geysers come in, you can see they're redirecting it out north towards the Mediterranean Sea, and even into the Nile River, so there's causeways are missing, but there are tunnels. They just found one that, what do they think? It's Cleopatra's tomb. They found it under some other temple that they've discovered. It's filled with water, but it goes all the way up to the Mediterranean Sea. That might have been an ancient drain for these 3 pyramids, or maybe just one of the pyramids. They might all have their own tunnel that goes up there. So we're talking, we're talking about geyser management here.
Well, John, we have about 5 more minutes. Are you able to wrap it up then, or should we bring
Yeah,
it back for a part 2?
No, I can wrap it up. I mean, it just, this kind of gives you an idea, this is the upper mantle, the water's coming up, and you can see the black arrow just shooting straight out. And this is a Menkaure that was supposedly dismantled by a Salif in the 1088. In between the Crusades, we're getting bored. It's like, let's attack these pyramids. We don't really get a lot of information from that area, but this was after Al-Mamun made his Al-Mamun's tunnel into GP1. But if you're tasked with taking down a pyramid, you're not going to be drilling sideways or bashing into a pyramid. You're going to go to the top of the pyramid, just start kicking blocks off. Anybody with a half a mind, even back then, is going to say, it's much easier to just go up there and start rolling blocks off. That would get rid of it. And so the story goes, they were going to prove superiority for Islam by getting rid of the pyramids. I don't know. Anyways, it didn't last long. But this, for my investigation, what I've found is this was a blowout from inside the pyramid. The check valve didn't work, or it got stuck, and the amount of pressure inside that pyramid just blew it straight out, right out into the northern part of Egypt, because it has all the markings and evidence of a blowout, not a dismantle.
Yeah.
So that's just giving the thing there. I don't know. Yeah, this is the Rickard structure. There's a little picture of the water. I hope it doesn't get that high. But this is an erosion from the global floods that they're starting to come back around. They've been going in the wrong direction for 100 years now. Geologists are they're getting back to the only thing that explains the erosion patterns. And this is the great Grand Canyon is a global flood. It's the runoff after you get a mile of water or a couple 100 feet of water over everything, and it starts to roll off. This is the only explanation is a global flood. And I'm theorizing that this place, they're looking at like maybe 10 or 15 global floods here, not just one. This is a common 26,000 year event, or maybe even a 13,000 year event. Could be even 6,000 years.
Yeah.
So I think that's it.
Interesting. That's very interesting.
I mean, it's horrifying, but it's at the same time, like you could see where a technologically advanced society that was aware of this anomaly, that was aware of these global floods, say, hey, like, why don't we try to control this instead of just dying off every 20,000 years?
But what isn't horrifying nowadays anyway? My goodness. But also, that makes me question a couple questions in my mind. So, God flooded the world to get rid of evil. But he also said he wasn't going to do it again after the first time. Yep. So are the evil ones flooding the earth now?
Well, that's the key. Everybody misses the word all. He goes, I won't kill all of you by flood again. Well, he didn't kill all of us by flood before, right? So the key word in that, I forget what, I think that's 7:11. Is that Genesis 7:11 or not Genesis? Revelations 9. I think it's 9:11. Ironically, it's like, we won't kill you all. I won't kill you all by flood. So that means 99.9% of you are going to die by flood. And then the 1% will stay.
Yeah. But you can see how the pyramids would come in as a safe haven, an ark, as you were saying, to save humanity. Yeah.
But I did the same thing because I got called on it a couple of times, but he said he wouldn't kill us all by flood. You gotta be a lawyer when you look. It's like word all, So he's gonna thin out the herd. I think it's all part of the divine design. I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
Every species on the planet can get out of control in its environment and destroy its environment. I think human beings have, got that same ability.
Oh, yeah. Well, look at they're trying to puncture. They're trying to puncture the firmament. If there's water on the other side of that, is that going to create the Great Flood? Is that what they're trying to do? Puncture the firmament and bring those waters forth as well and flood. All would then go away because it would kill everybody.
Right. Yeah, so the planet's it's a life-giving environment. So it will rebirth. It'll come back. We got incredibly sophisticated, highly technical, biological, um, designs of life forms on this planet that they'll survive anything and come back. It's just a matter of time. So, I mean, it could have been like we're at the stage right now where you could literally, build the ark. I mean, you could go up into a space station, but you could genetically um, record every life form on the planet, put it in a tube, and bring it back to life after a flood. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
test
Yeah.
tube, like you would have. Obviously, you'd have like a women, females in that particular life form where you would inseminate them to bring the life back. And things of that nature. But
Yeah. Well, do you have any final questions, Charlie?
Well, I was, you're talking about the firmament. If let's assume that it's this extraneous planet or sun or whatever it is that's coming in that causes this cataclysm,
mhm.
is it also not going to impact the water above the firmament? I mean, where is that? How does that all fit
Well,
together into the
the only,
theory?
what I tried, it's a good question, because the only thing that made sense to me was when he split the firmament, when he divided the firmament, the flood waters started to drain. So it's like, okay, he's opened something opened and allowed the water to go back underground. So when I look at the when he divided the firmament, I look at the planet as a water world, and you had the crust or the upper mantle.
Yeah.
So what he did was he divided the upper mantle and allowed the flood waters to go back down underground through the upper mantle where the transition zone is.
Okay.
So that's the engineering approach. Like, because water's got to go somewhere. It's got to drain. In the Bible, he said he divided it and the flood waters receded. That's actually the word, receded, I think so. So you just got to look at it as an engineering point of view, and you start throwing heaven in there and all this other stuff. It gets you get discombobulated, because we're brought up where we're taught heaven's up there, and so you throw those words in there. But if you go back to the earlier flood stories like Gilgamesh or what do you call it, the Anunnaki flood or Sumerian flood,
Right.
Ziese. Okay. That's a tough one. It's a tongue twister. But they don't talk about the firmament being split. They're just talking about the floods coming and then they recede.
Right.
So it's kind of, you just kind of like take a real common sense approach and say, okay, we know there's enough water here to flood the whole planet 5 miles over our head, right? And so that's just what we got to work with, and the geophysicists today prove that the water does seep down in the subduction zones. It flows back down into the upper mantle and eventually stratifies out in the transition zone. So and I think even without the 10th planet, the dead star, and all that other stuff, I think there's a cycle where even if you didn't have these external forces, that you're going to hit a saturation point with the ice melting and the waters and the oceans flowing down to this location where you hit a very critical point where you'll get a burp of the transition zone. Will just come right up above the upper mantle, and that water will just be released globally, and then the whole cycle starts over again.
Okay. Wow.
I hope I made some sense. I threw it out there as best I could,
Yes, of course. We thank you so much for being with us today. Everyone watching, you can find John and his work. He's on Facebook, he's on YouTube, and all of his books and links are listed in the description of the video. So feel free to get a hold of them with any questions as well. So.
Yeah. And it's like the infamous words from the movie Jaws. It was Roy Snyder. You're gonna need a bigger boat, you know.
Love it. Love it.
Any questions from the crowd?
We do have
or
one.
nothing?
We do have one right here. What is primary water? Is it by volcanoes?
Primary water. Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I know underground water.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. There's a bunch of different water cavities all over the planet. I mean, so I was like saying that those freshwater oceans, they could actually boil up or fill up too, and push right up. You know, there could be some kind of a mechanism that this water comes up, and then it pushes the waters that are underneath the Giza plateau, the Sahara Desert, Shen pyramids, the pyramids over in Central South America. There's huge oceans of fresh water that just defy logic, but they're there,
Yeah.
and they're way down. They're not something you could just go 1,000 feet down and grab. They're very,
Yeah.
very far down. So
Yeah. Well,
Anyway.
that's all we have for today then. Thank you, John. It
thanks
was
for
great
having
to
me.
have you with us, and I'm sure we'll have you back again soon.
yeah, if we get, I'll do it again. I just this
That's
is
great.
session talk.
Awesome.
I'm just kind of converting it from the written language to the verbal language now. So
Yeah. Well, take care, everybody. We'll see you next week.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
bye bye.